Hi, welcome. In this video, I'd like to answer a question regarding the board and train as it relates to where the dog hangs out or spends its time. Now, one of the questions was, does my dog have enough space to move around or interact with other dogs or whatever? And this is the thing to understand. How people have to understand when it comes to the issue of at the relational level with your goals when it comes to coming into right relationship with your dog and getting the dog into the proper script. When dogs are here on the board and train, how they relate to space, or actually more specifically how the bridge is built through other dogs, other people, environment, and how that relates into the person becoming the pivot point. It's a critical issue, because again, when a dog has a level of power, and then space becomes problematic, especially if the scripting isn't being brought online. So for example, is in a boarding situation, okay, you're taking a dog into a boarding situation. That's why boarding situations can be a nightmare for dogs that have a high level of power, because those who are involved in boarding certain dogs, they don't have the capacity to deal with it. And then if you're taking your dog into some sort of pet palace where you want your dog to have the best of everything and have lots of space, well, it could be an absolute nightmare for the people involved, because the dog's going to be tearing everything apart and trying to escape and trying to get out, because it just pumps them up. Here when the dog's coming to me for boarding, everything's all about scripting. So the space, or how the crate is used. Now I use the crate size I use is 48 inches. It's a good size crate, but it's not about the dog having space that way, where the owner makes the owner feel good about the dog's environment, because the scripting the focus is totally different here. I mean, it's about getting that dog, to get the stress off that dog, to get the dog in the right relationship. Everything has to be coordinated a certain way relationally to make sure the scripting happens. So therefore, the crate, how the dog responds to the crate, you have to get the dog used to being brought into right relationship by using the crate as a pivot point to help in that process. So therefore, you don't want that dog in a area where it has too much space that way, or even interacting with other dogs. You see some of these pack trainers using dog packs to paint the picture that your dog is actually coming along quite nicely, when in reality it's absolutely not. I mean, you're getting a counterfeit picture, because it's very important that trainer, if it's a board and train situation, that trainer needs to be the pivot point in a very strong way. That dog should not be hanging out with other dogs. If your goal is to get your dog into right relationship, it's got to come through the person. I mean, the focal point has to be the person. So therefore, this is where the crate is very useful, because how I use the crate, I think, this thing is, people have to understand, when you're thinking on a different level with dogs, when you really understand the dynamics in play, the crate isn't used or isn't thought of as a place to isolate or punish the dog. It's not set up that way to even think that way, because even how a dog responds, I understand how a dog responds to the crate when the dog's holding power. The dog isn't going to like it, okay, at first, but when the person is thinking properly, okay, that's when the dog's here in the board and train, it all lines up so fast, because I'm thinking properly. I'm not, engaging a dog, differently than other people. Everything lines up so fast, and so the crate is very helpful that way. And so, because of the scripting that happens in the board and train during the 2 weeks the dog is here, it's very focused. It's very much coordinated to set it up so that within that 2 weeks, you're getting the greatest possible level of role change as possible. And what it's meant to do is de-stress the dog. It's because it's very much, it all makes sense to the dog. It all lines up perfectly for the dog. But it's not a pet palace that way. It's not about just opening up the thing to make about the dog's feelings that way. You have to understand, it's different, but because the goals are different. So therefore, the crate, when the crate is used, the dog isn't just in the crate crated for 2 weeks. In fact, when I'm training dogs in a board and train, they're getting constant video updates. So and they're seeing the progress. So for me, with the quality and with making sure owners actually get what they paid for, the value, and it's all about trust. They're seeing, they're getting the videos. They're seeing me working the dogs. They know the dog just is not locked up here in the crate 24/7 on a 2-week board and train. That's not how I work, and that's why the board and train process itself. Okay, some trainers package the board and train up as a magic solution. Okay, and that's not how dogs are. That's not how it should be done. That's why people will really end up wasting their time and money, because it's about setting up the board and train process so that it seamlessly fits into helping the owner get a boost so that they can change. Because really, the owner has to change. I mean, the owner is really the key here. So the board and train process, it's meant to really give dog owners a jumping off point, a lay kind of like the foundation stone, so to speak. But it's not packaged up as a be-all and end-all. It's packaged up as a way to really fit into the scripting process, to help in the process, especially in severe cases, to take the pressure off the dog owner. But I'm working with them at the same time. So that's why I don't do longer than 2 weeks. 2 weeks is a good amount of time to get the cornerstone changed out so that you're giving the dog a good kind of boost. Because what's happening in the board and train, you have to understand, when people do board and trains, I'm role changing your dog. I'm doing the work for you, but the dog's relating to me. But the goal here, even oftentimes before I do a board and train, sometimes I recommend that the owner has at least one session at a home visit with me, so I can get them on the proper way of thinking before they do the board and train process. Because again, I want people to be happy. I mean, I don't want, this isn't about just making money to me at all. This is about ethics and making sure people understand the critical role they play in the process. So the board and train, again, get back to the crate. So the crate here, it's used. It really is used as a kind of a way to help the role changing process. And so because of the intensity of the process itself, because the dog is out a lot. I mean, that crate, the dog's in and out several times a day with me doing a leash technique, different interactions. Really, it's all about scripting. And so when the dog's in the crate, the dog is, it's downtime. Okay, the dog it's because it's mind and body. So the dog is de-stressing. I mean, you'll see dogs on their back, laid out asleep because of the scripting process. So just so people understand, yes, the crates are used here as part of the boarding train process, but they're not done. This isn't a typical boarding situation that way at all. It's a board and training process, so it's very intensive, but intensive not in the way of hurting the dog at all. It's intensive in the way of getting a really good level of role change created. It's good for the dog because it all makes sense to the dog. I mean, I've had dogs here where I could tell it's the first time everything kind of made sense. First time everything's made sense to them in their life. Because I think a certain way, everything's structured a certain way, and so it really de-stresses the dog. It takes a huge amount of stress off the dog, because the dog, the role for the dog to be in, the follower role, it's a healthy role for the dog to be in. So anyway, if you're thinking about the board and train process, if you have any questions about it, encourage you to, you can email or call. I'd be more than happy to answer them, but it's definitely not a magic pill, but if it's done right, it can be very, very helpful. It really can. But it needs to be seen within the process itself with the owner changing. Because again, it's all about making sure dog owners are happy. I'm role changing the dog for you. But at the same time, the dog goes back in your home environment. It's important to keep the process going. You have to keep that script going. for long-term, results. So definitely very helpful, but you have to put it within the right, context. So anyway, but the main question here is about the use of the crates. They're done. It's all scripted in that way. So it's very important that everything lines up that way. So the dog, you don't want the dog just to be out and interacting amongst other dogs that way. It's all about defining the script. It really is. The script needs to be defined and held in place. That script needs to be held together in place for that 2 weeks. It's going to be held in, defined properly, relationally, defined properly, lines up. It has to line up specifically that way in order to be as effective as it can be for the time the dog's here. So anyway, just something to think about. Thanks for watching. Hope you have a great day.